Like comedy, horror is subjective. Ask a sample population of moviegoers what scares them most in a film, and you will get a vast array of answers. For some, it's the perversion of religious iconography. For others, it's an unsettling performance that's all too human. Maybe it's the slow burn of a family tearing itself apart. Or perhaps it's the vast, encroaching unknown, looming at the edges of our sanity. And for some, it's bugs. Horror movies don't really scare me. If well crafted, they can get my pulse going and make me anxious about what's going to happen next, but I never dread the thought of them, and I could sit through just about anything no problem. But over the years, I've found there's a handful of films that do, in fact, make me uneasy with the mere thought of them. Despite their varying identities, they all share a common concept, one that hits the core of our beings, and in broader terms, speaks to universal struggles that we as mankind all face. That concept being assimilation. For horror fans, the film that first comes to mind upon hearing the term is probably John Carpenter's The Thing, about an alien life form that absorbs its prey and can imitate them perfectly. The beauty of The Thing lies in its perfectly executed sense of mystery, isolation, and paranoia, and its outstanding practical effects. But to me, there's something so visceral and cutting about the creature's modus operandi. With the glaring exception of the dog scene, which still gives me chills just thinking about it, we never explicitly see the alien absorbing its victims. And while that arguably makes for more artful, subtle horror, it's actually the 2011 prequel, despite its issues, that really makes my stomach turn. To put it simply, I would hate to be this guy. Or this guy. Or this guy. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine the biological processes going on here. What is it like to have your flesh and blood and organs assimilated? Your DNA merging with this hostile parasitic entities, forever fused, permanently tainted with something whose only impetus is to spread and take over. What would the pain be like? The crippling fear knowing that your very skin is now part of this thing, and that you're losing everything you are to it while you're still alive. And what would be going on in your head? How long could you fight it? Its will eroding your own. Some last-ditch instinctual sense of self-preservation screaming at you to live, to persist for just a little longer, while that same instinct slowly drains from you in favor of numb, mindless torpor. Another film that visualizes this sickening fate is Chuck Russell's The Blob. While the creature consumes its prey rather than assimilating them, some of the imagery in the film is strikingly similar to The Thing. And again, it makes me sick putting myself in its victim's shoes. This gelatinous mass that slowly overtakes you, trapping you in its own self, liquefying your meat, in a manner that keeps you alive for much too long, knowing that you're dead, that you too will become just tallow and grease within its ever-growing form. But don't worry, you'll stick around to experience the whole thing. With both The Thing and The Blob, there's an overwhelming, almost mind-breaking horror in how one brief touch can effectively doom you to losing yourself to a senseless force. But my first contact with this idea actually came from a much different film than these, one that, only later, did I realize shares a number of thematic similarities. I saw 28 Weeks Later at a friend's house back in 2010. I was around 12 at the time. How fate brought us to turn it on and watch it on his family room TV, I really could not tell you. Yes, the violence and graphic content were a lot at that age, but it was also my first formal introduction to the fast zombie trope, where the ghouls themselves weren't just fast, but infection was also fast. Until then, I'd only known the Romero zombies, stumbling stiffs driven to eat you alive, and whose bites could take hours or even a full day to convert you. Theoretically, if bitten, you could persist for a considerable amount of time in relative comfort, long enough to get a few things done, make peace, and say your goodbyes before opting for a relatively dignified death. With the rage virus, all it takes is a drop of fluid. Close contact such as a bite or blood spewed in the face can turn you in seconds, but the longest we've ever seen it take was maybe half a minute. And then it's over. You too will join the ranks of snarling, mindless beasts, itching to rip your fellow man to shreds. The scene where Don accidentally infects himself after a kiss with his asymptomatic carrier wife was seared into my brain at that age, and not just because it was exceptionally brutal. I spent the first half of the film watching this character go through so much hell, heartbreak, emotional turmoil, culminating in a tender moment with someone he thought he lost, only for that journey to be nullified in a matter of seconds, and for him to lose all that made him who he was. It wasn't just scary, it didn't sit right with me. A similar scene transpires in its predecessor, 28 Days Later, where, although not nearly as brutal, packs an equally effective emotional punch. We've known Frank to be a gruff but funny and caring father, an anchor for our cast of characters, all of it undone in a single drop of blood. His final moments are dedicated to an act of love, pushing his daughter away from him as he hopelessly fights the rage flooding his system. Within seconds, all we have known of Frank is gone. He's just another ravening monster who'd violently kill his own child without hesitation. Scenes like this make me feel sick. To go from a complex being with years of history and thought and love and free will, to a barbaric drone hell-bent on pulverizing everyone around you, those dreadful urges seeping into your core, hijacking your mind and telling you to forget everything you knew and loved, to give in to the rage, your vain, panicking efforts to resist, to cling on to what makes you, you, eventually melding with that very rage, all in a matter of seconds. It's also why World War Z, despite being an okay movie and a terrible adaptation, gives me the chills regardless. Its version of a fast-acting pathogen is much more deliberate and refined than the rage virus, and there's a cutting efficiency in how a victim goes from a person with a story to a dumb parody of what they once were, just another vector for infection. In a way, this loss of humanity and conversion to a hopeless, violent collective is a form of assimilation. Just as the Solanum and rage viruses have potential to infect the world's population, the Thing is projected to be able to assimilate the world's population within 27,000 hours, or just over 3 years. And given the right conditions, it's theoretically possible for the Blob to grow large enough to engulf every living thing on Earth and reupholster the continents with its own gluttonous self. At its core, what makes all these things scary, in my opinion, is the loss of control and the loss of presence in objective reality. To me at least, there's a certain comfort in being able to assess a situation, dwell on your feelings, or even look at your surroundings, and knowing that, despite everything, you are there and you are seeing things for how they are, unclouded by external forces. There's a paranoia in not seeing things for how they are, whether that comes from false perceptions or from a fear of your mental health degrading, be it from an injury, a drug, or even the march of time. Thankfully, there exist no biological agents in real life that rob our humanity in the way the Thing or the rage virus can. At least, not yet. In a society where it seems our senses of control and reality are being actively compromised by external forces, our humanity and senses of selves are the one thing we can fall back on, our tethers to sanity. The bonds we tie, the memories we make, the pieces we create, are tokens of expression that show we are living in this beautiful world, as we ought to be. To snuff all that out within seconds, and to feel it happen in real time, to me, is a form of cosmic horror. Some unstoppable, parasitic force rendering you insignificant, showing you that all that made you human was so fragile and worthless, that all it took was a touch, or a drop of blood, to throw it away. That's what keeps me up at night. That and the idea of getting stuck in small caves. Seriously, fuck that. But that's another story.